I just realised I can sit in the member spot. I'm a member. I was thinking the Environment Planning Committee. The reports match up.
All right.
No, it's just that's my bad.
Just let me know when we should go.
Maybe I'm the wrong thing.
I have to be here.
Good to go.
That's pretty much like a leap into the spot.
All right.
Of course. Meeting.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all had a good long weekend. I would just like to remind you all that this meeting is recorded, so what you say and do online, so please be mindful of your actions and your comments. Please avoid making any comments that might defame or offend other people, and remember that the online recording is retained in perpetuity. Please turn microphones off, general and mobile phones, and please don't film. I declare the meeting open at 5:04 p.m. We have a few requests for councillors to attend online. Councillor Daniels, a voting member, will be attending online today. We've also received requests from Councillor Lamont and Councillor Crowley to attend as observers. I've now got a motion that the committee approves these requests for these councillors to attend online. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Eaton. I'll put the motion now. All those voting in favour? Unanimous. Welcome to everybody attending in person and online. I would like to do the acknowledgement of country now. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and play. We pay our respects to Darkinjung country, elders past and present. We recognise the continued connection to these lands and waterways and extend this acknowledgement to the homelands and stories of those who also call this place home. We recognise our future leaders and the shared responsibility to take care for and protect our place and people. We have an apology today from the Mayor, Lauren McKenna. Does anybody have any other apologies they'd like to note? Okay, perfect. I'd now like to ask everybody to disclose any conflicts of interest that they might have on the agenda items tonight. Councillor Eden.
Madam Chair, I have an item number, but it's the backflow sewer policy, which I think I declared on when it first came to council. I've got a
1.5.
yeah, one of the is it's in my general interest return to that policy. Therefore, I'll declare an interest and leave the meeting while that matter is being debated.
Okay, perfect.
I'm just doing my form now.
I'd just like to note that so that on the attendance sheet as well. Perfect. Councillor Wright, any disclosures?
I'm sure nothing.
Councillor Smith?
Nothing.
Councillor Neal?
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Daniels?
Nothing to declare.
Myself, nothing to declare. We just need to confirm the minutes of our previous meeting. Do I have a mover?
Happy to move those.
Councillor Wright, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Neal, thank you very much. Put the motion. All those voting in favour? Unanimous. Now for the agenda items tonight, we've got various reports today. I propose to resolve on maths items 1.5 and 1.6.
Down to 1.5, sorry, I declared.
It's your declare. Okay, so 1.6. This particular policy is a technical policy. It's about structures not being too close and putting weight on our water and sewer assets. But happy for anybody to star that if they would like to discuss it or ask any questions, and otherwise star the remaining items.
Happy to move that recommendation.
Thank you.
You can normally just ask for people to star and then just move the ones.
Yeah. I don't see a great point in discussing 1.8 unless somebody's got a different view.
I would like to star that.
Okay, fine.
You're starring 1.8.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 1.10.
Okay, perfect.
I agree with that.
That's fine. Did anybody in particular want to star 1.6 or can we move that up by mass?
That one by mass.
Okay, perfect. So we'll star the remainder.
And what about 1.9? Do we need to do that?
We make it clear what's been starred.
Sure. We're starring 1.5. We're starring 1.7, starring 1.8, starring 1.10
1.9 is also starred.
and 1.9. Perfect. So by mass, 1.6. Right, so we had a mover and a seconder. Perfect. Put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous?
Sorry, can I just check that was right and then each seconded by Eaton?
Correct.
Yes.
I went backwards on that one. Okay, so now we move to 1.5. We'll ask
Yes.
councillor Eaton.
Okay.
Thank you. We need to close the door or we?
Did you try to listen?
I don't know, I feel like defeat the purpose of it. Right, I will now invite Director Jamie Loader of Water and Sewer to speak to this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, this policy was presented to Council a draft that went out on public exhibition. Essentially, backflow prevention devices installed on certain classes of building to prevent contamination of the drinking water supply. The policy was out on exhibition. We had 2 submissions. Only one of those was actually relevant to the policy, and that submission, the feedback from that submission has been incorporated in the updated policy. So the policy is back for a recommendation back to Council to adopt. The specifics around that submission were in relation to, from plumbers, and it was just references under the plumbing code and other various Australian standards which have been incorporated into that policy. So good submission that was incorporated into the final document.
Very good.
I've got a question.
Perfect.
Having read the report, and I know roughly what people have to do if they're subject to the policy, but frankly, I found it hard to decipher who is actually subject to it, which property. Is it only property with bidets?
No, that's certainly one of the properties that's required, but it's where generally where they have fire installations, irrigation systems, those sorts of things, where there's potential for, if there's a break in the main, for water to be siphoned back into the potable supply. So if it's not clear the specifics, we can certainly look at updating that in
I
terms
was
of.
just curious. I mean,
It's not just people with bidets though.
No, I did notice that.
There's a few more than
I noticed that in particular. I thought it was sort of odd. So how many properties would we be talking about? Are we talking about thousands, or are we just talking about a few?
I'm not sure of the exact number, but yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
In simple terms, the only properties that are excluded have got a service that's 20 or 25 mil. That's what's
Which is smaller than
small.
Normal residential connection.
I guess so really anything that's not residential or has a better.
Any other questions?
Can you move the recommendation?
Thank you, councillor Wright. Do I have a seconder? Happy to second it.
Councillor Daniels has just put her hand up.
Oh, perfect. Councillor Daniels. Now put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Smith? Sorry. It's okay. All right. And unanimous? Councillor Eaton, your return. 1.6 was that on mass?
Yes.
That was the only one we adopted.
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think that's 2.
Move on to 1.8.
1.7. I now invite Director Boris Volkov to speak to this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report's going to be a regular report that comes to this committee so that we can have somewhat of a discussion in the capital work. So we have got a presentation in relation to this matter. I'm sort of keen to see maybe after the meetings if there's any other improvements in relation to what this committee wants to see following the presentation that you've got. Michael Ross from Procurement and Project Management to go through a few slides for us. So I'll hand over to Michael.
Madam Chair, thank you. Slides. Slides.
I would like to present these.
Wait 1 moment.
Just moving into the first slide. So the flow of the report, follows the report. So if I take the report as read, a lot of the information is probably duplicated, but it just calls out some of the detail, and then as Director Bolgoff has mentioned, we can improve feedback as we can. So that's difficult to see on the screen. But it is a recap of the content contained within the report. That's our top 17 projects currently with a value of greater than $10 million. We do have 29 projects and programs greater than $10 million, but we focused on the significant projects of that value. With the report and the presentation, we've broken it into planning and design, and then this subsequent slide, the projects that we have in the implement deliver phase. Just acknowledging the difference in the life cycle of those projects. I didn't intend to sort of speak through this slide. If there was anything exception, you could talk to it. But we.
Yeah, sorry, I just had one question. And I know I've submitted a council information request on it, so you're more than welcome to take it on notice and answer it afterwards. But just want a bit of an update on Stain Road in Saratoga, because I know that's been going on for a while now. I know the process. I know the federal government has funded a few of those stages. My understanding is that we're going to progress next to stage 4, which is the council, the part that council's funding, and that's towards the end of the road. I believe we were originally told that was supposed to start in May. Are there any updates on when that's going to start?
That level of detail, I'd probably prefer to take it on notice and come back with a more detailed response. But there has been complexities with that site. We have heritage issues with those areas, issues, but concerns and things we have to be careful of and manage in the delivery of the projects. Acid sulfate, different to those sites. Designs commencing, it's a multi-year project. There's more design commencing next year, construction to complete the following year. But I can certainly come back with
it would actually be very useful for all of those projects to have some sort of time scale idea when they'll start and when they're finished.
Yeah.
Just for but I won't get you to do that for everyone on the fly, but maybe if you could circulate such a list.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, noted. When we're doing our review today, preparing is sort of something that we could be an improvement as well. So there's a lot of projects to talk through, so it's certainly helpful.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we take on board that we'll try and make this probably a little bit simpler, so that we can get a bit more, because there's a bit too much information maybe on that. It certainly looked really good on the paper and on the presentation, but in this format, I think we can do some alterations. So as I said earlier, it's the first time we're sort of bringing this. This will be something that comes regularly to this committee, and it might not mean that there's this much detail you're actually after. And like I said, I think things like when physical commencement is proposed, I think is a good one to included because some of them are proposed for, this financial year or next financial year and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and what people always want to know, when is
When do I break the ground? Yeah. Noted.
And so that intersection, Ocean Beach and Rawson, does that project value include the cost of purchasing the site or not?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you so much. Any more to your presentation?
Yes.
Beautiful. Please continue. We'll hold all the questions until the end of the presentation.
And so how we've taken the approach is we wanted to highlight a couple of major projects at each meeting, just to give that a try. So a project that's been fairly prominent for a while is the Gosford Regional Library, which is coming to an end in June, opening in August. And I understand there's some recent site inspections there, but just calling out that project, it's something that's that value in purely a building is something that's a little bit unique. But it's been a successful project that's coming to an end. And then something completely different being one of the natural disaster projects that we've done. So on Settlers Road, we had multiple slip sites and had to work in collaboration with Hawkesbury Council, because that's what's unique about the site is the centre line on the road is the line between Hawkesbury and Central Coast Council. So unfortunately, we had the slip side and we had to deal with that, but there was a good opportunity to work with our colleagues at Hawkesbury as they were remediating a Thomas James Bridge down around the corner. So big project, just to draw some concept or something sort of understandable, relatable to what the undertaking is, sort of with the Olympic pools, like the amount of the volume of material that they're taking off. And if you look at the slope, having machines and operating up in that sort of area, it's just been it's a unique job as well for council generally, and a lot of skills and experience gained in delivery of it.
So just a question on those two photos.
Councillor, can we just wait till
Well, except the photos there, Madam Chair.
we can go back?
All right,
It's-
okay.
It's just a bit better if we continue on with the presentation first.
Go back.
Okay, so we've got a couple of slides here. We've had some recent weather events with natural disaster 12/12 declared. So this is highlighting some of the sites that we've had some damage. Go through an emergency works and immediate recovery phase in natural disasters, and then the prolonged sort of recovery, which is what we've been doing with the 2022 events up until now and continuing. Here's a site at Arimba Creek where it's taken out the side of the road. One lane of the road has been maintained while we try to assess damage and other damage in different areas so that we can consider our approach moving forward. If we apply for funding, if we meet the $1 million threshold, and how we actually approach delivery of the projects. Next one, here's a bridge. So the bridge was inundated, damaged, but this is one where the crews got in and restored it within 48 hours and had it back working in the EW phase or emergency works phase of the project. Capital Works progress update. So this here is just capturing the spend at April. The May figures weren't available at the time, and the source of funds for that. So what's probably more telling is the next one here, which shows our spend. So at the end of April, it was 211 against a target of 228. But that represents 92%, 92.5% compliance. Currently sitting at 238 million against the budget of 264, which represents 90%, and that's at the end of May. When we go back to the natural disaster slide and consider the rainfall, and it's captured in the report, we've had over the months of April and May 2.4 times the normal rainfall for that period. It's a natural disaster declared, and with our capital and sort of achieving the figures that we have for the end of May, it's still an outcome that we're pleased with. But obviously a big month for June, and everyone's doing the best they can to push forward.
So sorry, Chair, just because the graph there. So that discrepancy between actuals and phased and original budget is due to weather?
This is actually in April. That's at the end of April.
Well, it's got cumulative.
Yeah, it's just year to date. So that 211 versus the 228 is the year to date at April. And then May figures have been released recently, so they're just not captured in this latest update. So the May figures are
when you go back.
Perfect.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we'll continue on with the rest of the presentation. I'm happy to come back to any of the slides that we need to come back to.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll go back to Councillor Edens first.
Bring back slide back, only because it looked, trying to get in my mind. Have you reversed the picture?
It is reversed, yeah. So before is the left-hand side. Looking down Settlers Road towards the.
Look, that didn't make much sense, and that's what it was. That's all I.
Okay, perfect. And we'll go back to the last slide. Thank you.
Okay, so just in relation to both those graphs, Councillor Smith, so the left one is the cumulative. I can run through. The yellow line is cumulative of the actual spend. The blue line is the phased budget, cumulative, and the orange, darker sort of colour was the original budget phased amount on the left-hand side. So the graph on the right-hand side is the monthly expected phase budget and actual budget, and the same we thought was originally phased, but it's by the actual spend per month rather than cumulative.
Okay, so sorry, but the left-hand graph, all lines are cumulative
Yes.
figures. So why is it flatlining the actuals?
So the last 3 months, and every place that I've worked at the last 3 months, it always flatlines, and I can't get rid of that out of the graph. So it should stop at April at the dot. That's the actual spend. So what happens,
I think it's just a technical error in the graphing.
so in the next one,
Is it a technical error in the
yeah,
graphing?
just ignore that because that hasn't happened. That's
Oh,
actual spend.
Sorry, okay,
So,
of course, yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
For the love of me, I tried to do that in a previous life and haven't been able to do it, but I will make sure I do something better with the presentation and hit that off for next spot. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps if I could ask questions. One of them is in regards to, I think probably should direct you, I'm not quite sure. The Regional Library Innovation Hub. I note today that there was quite extensive sort of walkthrough video that was on, I think it must have gone up on Council's Facebook page, and some of the comments that were coming back were very complimentary. Concerns regarding the issue around parking and the lack thereof. I'm just wanting some clarification, if it's possible to get it, whether there will be adequate parking for people with mobility issues or people who actually have some reason they can't possibly be sort of wandering around to actually get to that library space. I was also thinking about, local community organisations who may actually bring people, perhaps in a minibus or whatever, to experience some of the things that are going on in that new space. What's the provision for making sure that we're being inclusive and covering that, even if that we don't necessarily have a full parking station there? Are you able to give us any advice?
As far as the exact detail, I can't recall, but as far as with the BCC or National Construction, that's a requirement of the construction and the approval pathway. So I can assure you that there's provision for accessibility in the building and for access as well.
Yeah,
that's most certainly being considered.
Okay, thank you.
Just a bit of a random question. I thought I saw it in one of the tables, the Tuggeranong pathway. Was that listed in this early table?
I think Mannering was pictured.
Well, aside from that, can I just ask when committee and when would councillors receive further information about the Tuggeranong pathway? And I guess I'm just getting a fair bit of petitions and emails, any members that are expressing concerns. So is that likely to come to this committee or somewhere else?
Through you, Madam Chair, it is on the capital works plan as a project. So it's unlikely to come up to a committee for specific approval as the pathway is in relation to location is approved by council. The detailed design is the process that we start going through.
Okay, can I request that we get a report on it to this committee? I'm just getting some concerns and I'd like to understand concerns.
Yeah, I've also received representation suggesting that the community feedback was disregarded. It's true or not?
Look, I mean, I'm supportive of way back the Tuggeranong pathway, but there's a root issue that can be raised and
Can we put in the? No. We.
Well, anyone can request an item for the agenda.
Yeah. Well, that's it's a matter of the committee. That is making an additional report
Yeah,
to council.
I'm happy with that.
Would you like to propose as an
I think it's a-
recommendation?
It's a recommendation to council.
so sorry, what's your suggestion?
So it would be a recommendation to council that report.
Come back to this committee. Okay, and how often are we meeting?
Every 2 months.
Months.
August is our next one.
So does that fit in with the time frame of actually understanding and considering the current capital works program? Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So
Question?
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Just coming to the animal facility, regional animal care facility. First of all, I think it's might be appropriate that I and Councillor Stanton probably should acknowledge that while we're members of the Joint Regional Planning Panel, this would come to, typically the joint panel doesn't allow council representatives on council projects. So we wouldn't actually be sitting on that matter. Having said that, you know, for me, this is a critical project because we've got, you know, substandard facilities that are basically patched up, and I understand at Erina, there's huge water leak issues at Erina that the staff there, which are, you know, under a contract tender, you know, are really battling with. So I guess, is there any way, you know, is there anything we can do to speed up the process?
Look, I'd have to take that away and have a look, but the timeframe at the moment, the DA actually was received today, I believe. So the DA has been received, so now we move the project into procurement phase, so it's going to be...
Well, maybe as the chair of the EMP, I can suggest something.
So that in itself has accelerated the timeframe, or we allowed a little bit more time for that. I'm not understanding what the timeframe might be. So that's going some time in itself, and then for the next year, we're moving into sort of procuring or pulling together a...
So there's not a lot of money in the budget for next year. It looks like it's just planning money.
And then the following year, we go into... We could look at accelerating some of to bring forward.
Yeah.
But at this stage, it'd just be reset based on receiving the DA and forecasting out our timeframes based on receiving that a little earlier than anticipated.
All right, thank you.
So we do have a fairly aggressive capital works program, and it does concern me if we're going to be trying to shuffle too many projects around. One of the things I certainly want to put to councillors is we do need to spend time getting the design and the upfront process correct. I understand the urgency and those sorts of things, and we certainly will try and move things as quick as possible. But there is, you know, the design, there's approvals, there's, you know, DAs in this one. Sometimes there's enabling works. If we try to accelerate some of those, that's when, you know, mistakes can happen and it gets a little bit complicated and we're juggling. But you know, as a council, delivering on, you know, upwards of $300 million, there's a lot of moving parts. Yeah, certainly in, you know, a lot of the directorates, and especially, you know, in Michael's area. try and sort of make sure we're delivering.
Well,
on this.
that's why we have such great staff.
Councillor Eaton.
Can you please define aggressive in terms of a capital works budget?
Well, if we go back a number of years, it was close to that $200 million. We've been really, can we say, fortunate in some grant funding, as well as maybe a little bit unfortunate in, $74 million worth of natural disaster works on top of what we would have normally done. So there is a lot of work that we are delivering as a council.
So you're saying that that it's difficult to carry out those capital works with the budget you have, or I'm a bit uncertain what you mean by aggressive. Trying to be difficult.
As a council and delivering, $300 million, you look at some of the other councils, they're lucky to do $50 million worth of, capital works. We are, fairly large and we resource ourselves up and down. For example, in Michael's term, the natural disaster area, we've got specific staff that are not permanent staff, so that we can, upscale with there and contract that when we don't have a natural disaster. But we've just gone through another episode of wet weather, and as you seen from Mr. Ross's presentation, we've got a number of slip slides as well continuing.
But you're saying that it's difficult to deliver those capital works on the staff and back office.
So we need to be cautious not to juggle things around, because if we do too much of that and shift it, accelerate one, it's at a consequence of another.
Councillor Daniels.
Yeah, I just got more of a general question just in regards to the emergency works. I was out like Wiseman's Ferry Way and noticed some of those works being done. Just wondering, when the emergency works are like budgeted, is extra money put into the roads around? Because it seems like the big trucks and equipment that are going down there are damaging the road surface. It's quite lots of potholes, quite a lot of damage. Is that part of what's budgeted for, or is it just the general roads renewal?
Through you, Madam Chair, we actually got grant funding to do a fair bit of work down there. So some of where it was deteriorating faster than it would have normally deteriorated due to the wet weather, we got funds to do that. So it did go slightly further than the more obvious areas that you might have seen when you're travelling along Wiseman's Ferry Road. So it is a large component of the natural disaster work. I think the packages are the order of 2 lots of $15 million.
Yeah, total would be in the order of probably $30 million combined across 3.
And that did include pavement works as well in that area.
Any other questions from any councillors?
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate to raise a capital works item that might not be on that list? Only because I know Ross and Mr. Bolgoff have mentioned it previously, being the landslip on Avoca Drive.
Director.
Just to give the actual question, you might not take on that, but I know works was supposed to start, I think, last Wednesday on the 4th. Having walked past many times, I don't believe it has yet, but I do know it has been raining. Just wanted to see if you had an update. There are a lot of questions.
So if there's
through Madam Chair, look, the contract's about water. It's wet weather. I can only assume that it's attributed to that start. We had significant rain through that area down around the back of the shops as well, just through the recent event. So it's waiting for that to stabilise and steady up, and then I'll attack against the works.
Yeah, completely understand.
Understandable.
And I know maybe just some feedback again through you, Madam Chair. I know councillors put up some signage on Avoca Drive further down to mark out the road work, and I think the community's responded really well to that. Council's productivity, so some good feedback there.
That's a good thing.
Okay, if there's no other questions, can we please put the agenda items back up on the screen? Thank you. Council provides a report. To be reported back. Can we please add at the end of that at the August meeting? It's the wealth of August. Yes.
I could just tidy up number 2, please. It's that the committee recommend to council that a report on the Tuckerall project.
You need to say pathway project, or is it obvious?
I think that's fair enough. Shared pathway.
Shared pathway project. Any other amendments to the recommendation? If not, do I have a mover? Councillor Smith? You know, it's all right.
Okay.
All in favour?
Over on the bullets.
Look busy.
Unanimous. Item 1.8. Just a bit of background on this one. We've included this particular item in this agenda off the back of our last committee meeting, so that we can, in particular, view the election commitments that were put forward, and that we can continue to work together with all the levels of government to receive these outcomes. I'll now invite Director Boris Volkov to speak to this.
Following up on that, there was thank you, Madam Chair. There was a number of letters sent by the CEO to all the members of Parliament that raised these matters in the report. And I also wrote to Transport for New South Wales in relation to looking at expediting funding deeds and process in relation to these matters as well. That was a matter, as Madam Chair raised, that this committee was interested in.
Councillor.
Question, Madam Chair, to Director Volkov. Can you just clarify what you mean about expediting that with Transport for New South Wales, what that looks like, and if there was any specific project? Just because obviously I know, like, as we've seen with Voca Drive, like some of these projects do take a long time, but like what particular parts can you actually expedite, and like, what sort of material difference does that make to the project, do you think?
What is critical in these matters is a funding deed from the appropriate body, so that we are able to act on the project to deliver it. Sometimes these have taken in the order of maybe 1 or 2 years, and that is quite concerning. The process has certainly improved immensely, and working with Transport for New South Wales recently has been positive, and certainly thought it's appropriate to make sure that we are aware that the process is underway, and the mechanism that we work together with other levels of government is going.
Are there any of these projects listed that have potentially seen more progress than others? Like, for example, has the government come back and said, yeah, we're really keen to get Terrigal Drive underway, or we're really keen to get Voca Drive shared pathway underway, for example?
Are they both in your ward?
Yes. Be careful answering this question.
Through you, I have not received any information from Transport.
I was just curious if any of that had jumped to any of them.
They said, we really want to make Jared happy. Can you speed this project up?
I'll never apologise for representing my community, councillor.
So through you, Madam Chair, I haven't received responses yet.
I think we're still in the initial stages.
So early.
We've only recently set those requests off, given our previous committee meetings the last couple of months.
I do just think it's interesting that the reference to Sherwood Drive just talks about reducing travel times. That may or may not be whatever you think it might be. So it'd be interesting to get some clarification about what that means. Because it's part of a package for new existing road and rail infrastructure projects.
In other words, what they normally do is they allow the council to select the parameters of the project that fit the funding and the requirement for speed up traffic. That's generally what happens in my experience.
Councillor Eaton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But just to follow up on that, is the process that we get the funding fee, and then we have to do the design? Or do we have a design ready for any of this stuff? Because how do you cost it without a design?
Through you, Madam Councillor Eaton, some work is in our existing programs so that we're allowed to then expend those funds towards the project, where developer contributions have committed. So
I'm really talking about these two big road ones.
well, the two big road ones, I think you're talking about Transport for New South
Yeah.
Wales, that we don't have any involvement in relation to the funding. So we don't design that. The only time that we are involved is when Transport for New South Wales, come to us seeking comment.
Okay.
And
They're projects.
Are they on state roads? That's right.
Okay, right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that clarifies that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, do I have a mover?
I'll move the recommendation with an additional section that we thank MPs Emma McBride, Gordon Reid and Pat Connery for the commitments made and the benefit to the community that they will provide.
Happy with that. I'll second.
They weren't ready to type that yet.
I didn't catch what you said.
Would you please repeat that for
Yes.
us?
That we thank Emma McBride, MPs Emma McBride, Gordon Reid and Pat Conroy for their commitments to the attached projects and for the benefit to the community that they will provide.
Thank you.
It's the names. They will provide. And the project should have an S on it.
We'll fix the full name.
Okay, perfect. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous?
Yes.
Sweet.
Through you, Madam Chair, just whether, I know that this has been carried, which is great. I'm just wondering how we will be thanking them. Is it a letter? Is it, how does that happen?
I think the idea was that this is just part of the motion, that it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be nice if the
It would be a
letter could go to.
I'll, through you, Madam Chair, is I would write a letter.
Yeah.
Referring to this committee, noting that
Yeah.
the committee resolved in part the
Yeah.
following.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Boris.
Item 1.9.
It's fine.
It is Boris to give us an update on this item.
So, councillors, this is a couple of items that I spoke to the movers in relation to Monastery Road, which is Councillor Neal, and also Councillor McGregor in relation to McDonald's Road. Why I'm trialling a new way to bring information to the committee where the timeframes were not able to be met, so that it's quite open and transparent. So both councillors weren't opposed to the changes in timeframes, subject to just having some clarification in an open forum, which we're currently doing now. Just in relation to Monastery Road, I was proposing a workshop because we just got some drone footage of that area, and I want to show some survey. And also there is some confidential matters in relation to that, which I think a workshop will be beneficial. In relation to the road matter going to traffic committee, it was around timing of the traffic committee and the ability to get that work up and what needed to be done in relation to all the priorities of staff, so that we can meet doing the report and delivering on an outcome in that space. So I'm proposing a new way to deal with that in a transparent way, and we'll see how that goes, how the councillors like it or not.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Neal.
I can second.
By Councillor Wright.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify then what's the new way, Boris? I didn't quite understand. It's the workshop before it comes to the committee, is that?
The new way is that we've got an opportunity to, if we're not able to meet a certain time frame, I can actually come to this committee and say why, and introduced to understand, like for one of them, to, for instance, have drone footage be taken, and so we can understand what's actually happening on site.
Yeah, I'll just briefly speak to it. The issues around Monastery Road have essentially been there since the subdivision was done in the 1930s, and it's not been resolved. So in my mind, a slippage of 1 month, so long as eventually it is resolved, is has not a dire consequences.
Fixing up 90 years of thank you, councillors.
If there's no other comments or questions on this, then I will put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Item 1.10. I invite the director to give any remarks. Otherwise, I would like to move the staff recommendation. Do you have any comments to make?
No, this matter has been to council in relation to the workshop for the public toilet strategy, and the feedback in relation to that was positive. Matter is before you to go to the next level of council.
There is
I've
another.
got questions, that's all.
Yeah, I've got questions too, which may, depending on the response I receive, may mean a amendment to the recommendation.
I'm happy, Councillor Gallagher, first.
Thank you. This toilet strategy really is about the location of toilets and whether we put new toilets in or remove them. There is no policy in there in relation to what is provided in the toilets. In particular, whether or not there's soap provided. In most cases, there is soap in the toilets, but not always. And I think it's probably important that we actually state in our policy whether that's a requirement for our public toilets.
Through you, Madam Chair, soap is provided, so maybe it's not, it's in the kit of parts of the diagram. That's where it is included, so you've got a number of different styles in the strategy, which is a type A, type B, etc. And that's where the information is kept. I'll clarify if that's the case.
But is there actually a statement that soap should be provided in our toilets? Anyway, I couldn't find it if there is.
There is probably not that statement in the strategy documents, but it is supported in the standard design kit of parts that we've put together to go along with this. There may be currently some gaps in that provision of soap amongst the existing public toilet network. And by implementing that standard kit of parts, we'll be going around and updating all of those to make sure that they have the standard soap dispensers in them.
I just would like to see that, and I will move an amendment to that effect, that it is our policy that we provide soap in public toilets, bearing in mind some of the issues associated with that, particularly during COVID. Everyone was able to properly clean their hands. Having travelled extensively around Australia, there are many places in Australia where public toilets don't provide soap, and I think that's a concern.
Look, I think that's appropriate to include. I'm just trying to think if it's already included in the kit of parts, if we need to put it in.
You're saying the kit of parts.
Look, in
Design.
yeah, pretty much the design
Right.
template that
Right.
is identified. So it's a certain type of toilet. So we don't actually say we're probably putting a type of pan or in the actual strategy itself. It refers to the design
So what are
type.
the words you're saying, Doris? Kit of parts, is that it?
Yes.
All right, sorry.
It's Swahili.
Engineer talk.
And I understand that it might be obvious to you, but a lot of people.
No, I think that's
not to me. It's not, and I think it's something important that we should, in terms of the public health of our community, that we make a statement.
I want to thank Councillor Neil for raising this, because when I raised it, Councillor Neil, I got shouted down by the director.
Buttons hard.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. I mean, firstly, I know having spoken to the, firstly, I know this has had a lot of consultation in this process, but I think it's been really good. I know the Kill Care community with being able to keep the toilet block at Hardy's Bay. I was only down there about 2 weeks ago and they were very, very pleased, which was fantastic. Same with Pretty Beach, keeping the sheltered area for tennis players was very well received. The only one still wanting some further clarity around is just the Vicus Avenue toilet block. I know we've had some back and forth on design and, acknowledging that the current design doesn't meet providers. I just want to know if we adopt this policy at the next council meeting, what does it actually look like for the Vicus Avenue toilet blocks? Like, is there a revised design that would be in there?
no. We're not, sorry for you, Madam Chair. The whole idea for those significant ones is would go out on consultation. We have taken the feedback in relation to that design and we've included in the commentary that allowances will be made. So when we go to upgrade that particular block, we will take on this advice and they'll have another opportunity to comment on the proposal when it's up for replacement.
The other question I had was just around timing, just for all of this, because I know the strategy doesn't identify timeframes for individual block. And I've had a few comments from the community in regards to the operational plan, noting that there's no money for public toilets. And I naturally assume that is because this strategy hasn't been adopted and we'll look to adopt this in June, or is there another reason?
No, through you, Madam Chair. There is funding in the pipeline to cater for this strategy. Yeah, both for the capital works has been identified. There is 13 grades in the next 10 years. from memory. So we have put that in the pipeline. So that was part of the capital works presentation that was provided at the workshop. The other component was the operational side, that we can add in the sanitary bins and what we're doing for the next 10 years as well.
So do you know what's in the operational plan, which blocks for next financial year?
I think we do.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. In terms of Ficus Avenue, it is a relatively high priority project on our renewal list. It is likely to occur in the next 18 months at most, I would say.
Okay.
So it is very high on that list. And that consultation will kick off in next financial year to include whatever facilities we are looking to provide, which in this case is going to be around the board riders of storage and what next as well. So that will be included. The comments you received from people around the delivery program, operational program that was put out there, we have actually just put in that document a particular sum of money each financial year for renewal of public toilets and for the construction of new public toilets as two separate lines. But once we have the public toilet strategy adopted, we'll be able to look at putting a more detailed implementation plan with future reviews.
Councillor Daniels.
So you come back quick because I haven't actually finished.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, is it me? My reception's a bit funny.
Yes, go ahead,
Yeah.
Councillor Daniels.
I just had a question just regarding the Blue Lagoon bathrooms. I note what was said in the recommendation about it being Crown land and it being a bit difficult with access and that kind of thing, and that if we don't get a satisfactory response in 6 months, that the toilet be closed and demolished. Just wondering if we could possibly, maybe before the toilet is demolished, be able to get some feedback from the staff about what's happening before that next step.
If the committee so desires, we can do that.
We'll just go back to Councillor Neal first, and then we'll go to Councillor Lamont and then Councillor Castles.
Just
Oh, sorry, we'll go Councillor Neal, Councillor Eaton.
I've sent around a picture to all councillors and to the director as well. In my fact-finding mission in Korea and Japan, I visited a number of hospitals. And one of the things they had there that I thought was very valuable that we might want to incorporate in the design of our toilets is a little apparatus that allows a mother with a small child to actually put the child into these seats so they don't have to hold them while they go into the toilet. So I might propose that obviously they had them in every single cubicle in the women's toilets. I don't know if they had them in the men's, I didn't inspect those. But I think it's very valuable. I don't think we need to do it in every cubicle, but maybe each block should have one. For anyone who's tried to go to the toilet while holding a small child, it's quite difficult, probably not particularly hygienic. So I'd like to suggest that as a change for not for the existing toilets, but for the construction of future toilets.
I think the design is complete for these.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, the councillor. Design on the run like that from holiday gigs, there is, you know, I'm anticipating that there's prams, etc. When you're doing that, I prefer not to have it in the actual strategy because we haven't had time to consider the cost and, you know, is it available and those sort of things. However, I'm happy to, consider all.
Well, I'll if we can maybe that we have examined that possibility. How often do we review the strategy?
We have this because the implementation plan was looking at 10 years, at 8 to 10 is the proposed review of the strategy.
It's unlikely to happen in my lifetime.
I don't know, Councillor Neil.
You'll be
Uh,
right.
Look, I'll suggest to the committee that we note that that is something that has been identified. I'll be reluctant to put it in the strategy itself at this point, but it's certainly something that, you know, like anything that councillors can raise, it's something we can definitely look into.
One other issue is the Mangrove Mountain toilets. I did know there was some feedback, but it really wasn't terribly clear which toilets they are referring to. The Mangrove Mountain, the only public toilets that are open all the time are the toilets near the hall opposite the corner store. They're basically drop toilets and they're quite deteriorated, and there's concern in the community that the refuse is leaking into a public area which has a children's playground adjacent to it. Can I get any feedback about that issue?
The feedback through you, Madam Chair, was that that was going to be sewered in the next 1 to 2 years, but I'll hand over to Mr. Coleman to give a little bit more details.
Look, the issue there is not so much sewered, but we're looking to convert the drop toilets into a standard flushing toilet using, you know, rainwater captured off roofs, etc. Flushing out to a septic tank so that's collected and pumped away. But already got that design in progress, and we'll plan to roll that out in next
I
financial year.
couldn't find it in the strategy.
That actually isn't in the strategy because we're seeing it more as a maintenance problem, because the toilet itself is kind of functional as a toilet. It's just the standard of it being a.
Well, it doesn't even have a sink to wash your hands.
Okay.
There's no sink, and it literally is leaking. I would like to see that included in the strategy because it will rate with the community. It's not a second toilet; it's just a workable, hygienic toilet. As well as the local communities, a lot of people who go up there during the weekends and visit, and obviously utilise those toilets. I'll formally move that as part of the adoption of the report in due course.
Director, do you have any comments on that?
I thought there was a hand basin on the outside of that particular toilet, but it's been a little while since I've been there. I don't try all the facilities, but I think it's caught up in relation to what Mr. Coleman said, that it's probably noted that there is maintenance work being undertaken at the Mangrove Mountain toilets that include the flushing ability and review of the hand washing facilities. I think that's the wording that's probably okay to include.
Okay, when we get to that, we'll
Thank you, Pat.
we'll get to when we get to the
Yeah,
we'll put all the
right.
amendments forward and then we'll go to that. Next, Councillor Eden as a voting member, and then Councillor Lamont and Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, and then sorry, and then Councillor Castles before Councillor Crowley.
So I do have a few questions. So first of all, there's a slight typo in the report on page 53, where it talks about the closure of Lions Park public toilets while, and then it says no change to the strategy. Recommended the proposed outcome is to close Charmhaven and tennis public toilets. So I don't think there's any problem with the strategy, but
Yeah, noted.
just thought that I should mention that. And then talking about demolishing, like this one, it says demolish this within 2 years. And I think I read somewhere in the report about some of them are going to be demolished at the end of life. My view, for what it's worth, is that once the strategy is adopted and it's going to be demolished, get onto them and do them as quick as you can. But otherwise, if you leave for 2 years, people will say, I didn't know about that, you didn't tell me about it. And of course, there's significant operational costs for whenever you can decommission a toilet, which you can put into other toilets that you don't want to. Then there's a few of them that, how do we actually work out which ones weren't required. Again, I noticed there was something about ratio of public toilets per resident. And yet there's some of them that, to me, that, seem obvious, like Tukley Gardens. You've got a toilet, then you've got one at Osborne Park, and you've got one at two, I think, at Canton Beach, plus the one in the car park, which is probably 200 metres away. And yet that doesn't seem to have been, mentioned at all. Well, I think it was mentioned, said we need to keep it. Like, I can't see the logic in keeping that one. There's a few others like that. Yeah, sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair, the closure or the need for public toilets is not purely a ratio of population.
No, I agree with that.
Instances. You've got to look at other factors as well. What we're looking at, is, in addition to that, in the example you're talking about, what would be an attractor that would cause somebody to be in that location for an hour or two, and therefore may need to use a public toilet within a reasonable distance. In most cases, what we've tried to do is avoid this overlap of public toilets, but in some cases, we felt it was appropriate to keep a little bit of an overlap, simply because of the fact that there'll be like we call a dwell time at a particular location, whereas the other location, which may only be a few hundred metres away, is also a generator of people staying on that site for similar periods of time.
Okay, well, I come back to Tukley Gardens. Doesn't make any sense at all. There's not much parking there. You've got the town centre's got the car park and the toilets, which is reasonable. On the left side of the lake, Osborne Park, you've got toilets there. On the right side, Canton Beach, I think there's 2 lots of toilets at Canton Beach. Certainly at least one anyhow.
I think it's the part here.
Another toilet expert.
I'm not an expert on all these locations.
I don't profess to be a toilet expert either. I don't want to be known as that. Yeah, so Tukley is an interesting one because there is some over servicing. So you mentioned Canton Beach. Yes, there is 2. There's one predominantly right next to the accessible playground, which has the accessible toilet, those attributes. And there is one further up. Is just is an older style, so it does have your men's and women's. So the 2 cater for different demand factors. So the one up near the playground caters for the accessible playground and those sorts of activities, and the one further down caters for people who are on the waterfront and on the beachfront. That's probably a good example. Very close together, cater for 2 different demand groups. Now, we went out to public consultation for Nora Head in a very similar situation. We proposed to remove one because they're literally within a stone's throw. We got a lot of public commentary to go, do not remove it. So
No, I agree with that. I agree with
expectation.
Nora Head I was happy with, which is,
Yeah.
this one particularly seemed
Particularly gardens, yeah.
particularly, stuck out like a proverbial.
So what we've also tried to balance off is the future strategic direction of Tukley. So we have the Tukley Library, and there's a toilet out the back of the Tukley Library. We've also got the Tukley Aquatic Centre, and there is some master planning activity happening around the Tukley Aquatic Centre. So we've sort of hedged our bets, going, okay, so we've got Tukley Gardens. That's at the western end, I suppose, of Tukley. Then you'll have the Village Green. Then you'll likely have the library moved up with the aquatic centre, and you'll have toilets there. So you have 3 in that area which are spaced appropriately apart. So you have one at the start of the town centre, one in the town centre, one at the other end of the town centre. But if we look at it with that longer term strategic direction, that's kind of why we didn't remove. Even in the strategy, I think it talks about on the sensory gardens one you're talking about. It talks about downsizing it anyway to just a single. Oh, sorry, whatever. Whichever one. Which one's the Tukley Gardens?
Tukley Gardens.
Sorry. It talks about downsizing that to a single cubicle as well. So again, still maintaining the availability of a toilet, just making it smaller. So there are options. Yeah.
I think it should be closed.
Councillor Ing, did you make any comments when it was up for exhibition?
No. But now I've got my opportunity, haven't I, Madam?
I raise one other further issue, and that's in relation to Mannering Park.
Can we just continue on the rest of the queue because we've got a lot of people waiting?
I love the word.
Perfect. Councillor Lamont.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just a couple of questions to I guess, Director Bolgoff about the Blue Lagoon toilets. And one of the things that was just mentioned is about the attractor of the toilets being one of the considerations as to whether you're going to keep toilets or demolish them. I know the ones at Blue Lagoon are a bit different because there's that Crown land complication. But one of the things that one attractor is accessibility. And I know that there's been funds that have been set aside for stairs, the lower stairs and also the upper stairs. And I was just wondering what has actually happened to that, the funding there. I know in the operational plan that we've just seen, there's 40,000 allocated to the lower stairs. That was actually reduced from 50,000 last year. So I'm assuming there's been $10,000 worth of work on the lower case. And then there's also, I think last year's operational plan had a budget allocation of 343,000 for the upper stairs. So I'm just wondering what has happened with that. Because obviously if those stairs were in place, there'd be a lot more people using the toilets and even the reserve as they were before. At the moment, I'm just wondering whether council realises that those toilets are actually not open at all. They're not being used. They've actually been locked up to an incident there as well. So I was just wondering if you could give me some information on the funding and also the closure of the toilet at the moment.
Through you, Madam Chair, just in relation to the funding, I can't comment that in relation to the timing of the stairs. The fundamental issue in relation to that isn't so much the stairs, it's their ability to service those toilets. Even if there was operational stairs in there, the access through the Crown land and the adjacent site is the issue for council. And I note that Councillor Daniels has raised this in relation to prior, that may be a for the group, but on the cards is a potential comment in relation to a 6-month timeframe that something comes back to the committee.
So just clarification, and when you say access is the issue, is that physical access or permission access?
Both.
What's the physical access, is it?
Sorry, through going.
The steepness of the
stairs?
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Lamont, did you have anything else?
Is there a reason why we can't sort of talk about the funding for the toilets at the stage? I was just wondering why the item wasn't actually on this year's operational plan as well.
The matter is in relation to the public toilet strategy, not the funding of the stairs, so I don't have the information before me.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So I might put a customer request through then regarding the funding. It's just the comment about the I guess the attractor factor being part of the decision with the toilets, but I realise, how about the aspect of the toilets actually being shut at the moment, so they're not really being used anyway? Is council aware of that?
I've been told the council are unaware that they are shut.
Okay. Because apparently the people from the resort have actually closed the toilets. They're not opening them up or servicing them either. So I was just wondering whether that could be looked into. Because if we are going to look at this in 6 months' time, I guess we'd probably want to know why they're not going to be open during that period as well, I guess.
We'll look into that. Councillor Castles.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Mont covered some of the things I was going to cover, which is great. But one thing I did want to get some clarity on. This is Bluebell Park at Berkeley Bell, and it's saying now that public toilet will be retained in service and not closed. I'm just seeking clarification that a new toilet facility is still planned to be constructed near that Jimmy Jerd Park, which is sort of further up Lake Edges. So we're not sort of removing one, keeping one and then not doing the other, because I know there's been a big community need for that for obvious reasons with the park there and all the rest of it.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Castles, that other location is being retained.
Yep.
It was a little bit challenging in relation to, I suppose, the proximity. I went out on site to have a look at that. And, you know, supported the officer's recommendation. And we also had, I think, you know, counters. So we, you know, we've got the utilisation rates as well of the existing one there. So, yeah, we did consider, do we need both? And decided that that's appropriate to put the new one in and retain the
Yeah.
one.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, could I ask Director Volkov or anyone that might know, when you talk about soap in the toilets, can I just clarify with you what you mean by you? I'm hoping you don't mean bars of soap.
To you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Crowley. No, it's push pump
Things.
type liquid soap that is in a stainless steel container. So it's not then ripped off the wall and.
Oh, lovely. Okay. I was a bit frightened when you were talking about soap. That's all. Thank you.
No blocks.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Neil.
I was going to move an amendment to the.
Well, we're doing questions right now.
Yeah.
So
The question I have is in relation to Nannering Park. I've been advised by a representative of the community that there is no public toilet within the sort of town area. I again wasn't able to identify anything in there that would be about providing a toilet in Nannering Park. Do you have any information about that issue?
One down the point, I think.
Good recollection.
Not in the town centre.
Yeah, it's sort of like a kilometre away from the.
Yeah, good.
And apparently they're.
Town's pretty small, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Town's pretty small, has 2 public toilets. There's one at the boat ramp at the very end of town. It gets hammered during summer, so we're definitely planning that. There is one only about 250 metres away from the shops at the in a little sporting precinct. So there's a skate park, there's a tennis court, and I believe a kids park. It's the current toilet's integrated as part of the tennis club building, as part of the strategy. It'll be split out, so it'll be a standalone toilet, which is within about 250 metres.
I was told, people did tend to go, I was told a kilometre.
I actually lived in Manor Park for like 20 years or so, actually. A little bit longer. Yeah.
You're quite confident in that.
It's not that far.
Yeah, I agree.
As the crow flies, it's about 250 metres. It's probably about 400 or 500 metres if you walk the streets. It's really not that far. Yeah.
I wouldn't have, that just go down at the corner there between the post office and the bakery. That street goes straight down to the park.
You're talking about the Oval, the Oval Melbourne Skate Park, which is down that road.
Oh, I know what the skate park is, yeah.
Very short distance.
Councillor Wright.
Just very quickly, and I'm happy to speak to Director Bolgoff afterwards about this. I had a few concerns from the community just about the lack of, obviously there's going to be a new playground going in Empire Bay, potentially next financial year, and there's no public toilet there along the waterfront. There is one back at the tennis court, but to your point previously, we're going to have a brand new playground with not even a single public toilet, and it would be probably about 1 kilometre for people to walk. I know this was raised during the public consultation phase, and perhaps we can discuss this after because I know we need to move on, but I'm happy to take it offline.
Okay, in that case, we're going to continue on. As the mover of this motion, I've got all those amendments written down and we've got some of them on the board already. If we can rework some of them and then we can take the rest of the comments from the rest of the councillors. Could we please first go to 2G? If we could include at the start of that sentence, an inclusion of liquid soap. You can put the where it already says the inclusion of liquid soap. As well as, and then if you go down a sentence where it says, no, same G, sorry. noting that council will remove the sanitary bins instead of service. Yep, perfect, thank you. Can we please go to 2D? Just before the last sentence where it says, should an arrangement be established within 6 months, be retained, and then just after the end of that, full stop. Instead of your I. Yep, can we say that a report come back to this committee if an arrangement cannot be established? Da, da, da. Months prior to the Blue Lagoon public toilets being closed and demolished. We just need like a report to come back established within prior to the established.
Sorry, Chair, do we want a report to come back in either case? Like, don't we want to know what the arrangement is? So, I don't know.
I guess I was thinking
Operational for us.
I think if it's already going ahead with the others, it's kind of,
Okay.
the concern is more if it's going to be demolished, we need to have a report.
Okay.
So could you please zoom into the page a little bit? Yeah, that's great, thank you. Should an arrangement be established within 6 months? A report come back to this committee if an arrangement cannot be established prior to the, because, yep, perfect, thank you so much. Can we go down to 3? Can we put a new 3? And we can delete your 4. And then the new 3. Oh, no, we need that. That's number 4. New 3. Like enter recommends. But recommends is. No. The existing 3 will become 5.
Okay.
So we need to put a new 3 and a new 4 in. Yep, perfect. I think it's just notes. Alternative design suggestions. Be included as part of future revisions. The public toilet strategy. And new 4. This is the maintenance work at Mangrove Mountain. Boris, did you have?
Yeah, I
Yes.
wrote something, but note that the Mangrove Mountain toilets are being upgraded by provision of a
Go slow, go slow.
CP system. I'll read through it, then go back to slowly. To replace the drop toilet system and the provision of hand washing facilities as part of the maintenance. I'll start that again.
Yeah, that's good.
While that's happening,
Did you have any
Madam Chair,
to that?
in terms of 3, I think, shouldn't it say design suggestions be considered
Yes.
rather than included?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lock it in.
No, be considered. That's
So which
correct.
design is that the baby holder?
Yeah, and just in general, just alternative design suggestions, kind of more broad encompassing. But yes, that's
Can we do, maybe include the baby holding?
Such as,
You'll be grateful one day.
such as baby holding facility.
Yes.
But change included to be
yes,
considered.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Both of those sound very good.
The other item, I
Just
When you're ready.
Can we just go to 3? Where it says included, could you please change to considered? And then say, where it says design suggestions, comma, such as, what do you want to say, like,
Baby
child,
holding.
child,
Baby
child
holding.
It is, maybe, I don't know.
Holding
Child-
facility.
child seats,
That's
like, what's the, like,
It's a, I think
Child restraint.
baby holding facility, I think.
I don't know, like a
Close enough.
You might have provided the photos.
child.
I've sent the photo, or I've already sent the photograph.
Holding facility.
Sent you a photograph, so you can.
Child,
I didn't think
like, you know,
that's
like a, you know, like the, when you feed them, it sits in that, it's the same.
baby chair.
Yeah.
Called a high chair.
Oh, chair.
But yeah, we say high chairs.
Child holding.
It's a variation.
Such as child holders. That sounds weird. Such as child holding facilities.
This is so difficult.
Do you have a suggestion?
I think there's an
Councillor
emotion.
Walsh?
A child, what did I say
Child-
before?
Can you look it up in
Just a
the Japanese word up in English?
Can we placehold that particular wording and
I
we
think it's a child holding frame. I think that's close enough.
That's the best thing we have tonight. Child holding frame.
sounds
See picture.
Councillor Neil's following.
like a booster? High chair. High chair is the right thing.
Oh, well, it's not, the high chairs are freestanding.
It's when you feed them, so that's not going to be very.
It's not in Australia yet, so it's fine for wording.
Be considered as part of, yep, perfect. Such as, can you put a comma at the end of the frame, the highlighted one? Yeah, perfect. Did you want to confirm the language in 4 that is?
Who they call Japan?
I don't think seepage
Not a
system is-
septic system.
Is there more than one toilet in Mangrove Mountain? It's not going to be any confusion about which toilet is it?
Are we able to put an approximate time frame on that one?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we just responded. It was within the next
Yeah.
2 financial years, yeah.
Yeah, I know you did respond and I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that.
So it'll be within the next 2 financial years, but it's a septic system.
Septic, not seepage, yeah.
Magnum flushing.
Got a seepage system now.
I think can we, I would like to have that included by the end of the coming financial year.
That's what you're saying, isn't it? The next
Is
financial?
it? Are you saying that?
I think it's
2 years, I think. that's-
2 years.
I think a hygiene issue really should have some greater speed.
I'm saying 2 years. And I don't know, without the operational impacts to be able to give you either. And if we can certainly get it done quicker.
Why don't you just say soon?
Within
As
2
practical.
years, no, I'll say within 2, that doesn't mean anything to me.
No.
So within 2, by the end of, what are you saying?
End of June 2027.
So
26.
I know.
Did you say
Did you say 27?
You did say
But is
20.
that one where you guys have a counter on it at all? I'm just wondering with the Harvest Festival just gone, does that? So I think there is merit and value in considering it, how much sooner it could be done because we are doing those big events up there.
I just think it's a great idea through Madam Chair. It's just that, you know, I don't want to be doing these things on the fly. And if the advice was 2 years, that's what I'd like to stick to. But if I can do it any earlier, certainly encouraging it to happen.
Send you a Christmas card if you finish it early.
Yes, councillor Eaton.
I'd like to suggest, we at least consider, whether it's in here or not, that something like the committee supports the closure of those toilets identified for closure as soon as practical following adoption of the strategy.
I will not accept that as part of this particular motion. If you'd like to move an amendment, happy for you to do so.
Yeah, okay, I'll move an amendment.
I think the issue with that is some of these toilets have been earmarked to maintain while others are being built.
Yeah, there will be a sequencing issue. I get where you're going on this, councillor, and it's certainly more cost effective, but I don't want to take away the facility from the area if there isn't a new facility.
Get very negative feedback if it's time.
So understand the two.
But once it's there, 2 years' time when you close it, you know what'll happen. It'll be, you know, you never told us, you never.
To the same effect, right? If we were to just start demolishing tomorrow with a bulldozer, people would say, where did this come from?
It's been out, it's been out in public exhibition. So for instance, the one in Wyong is, I agree. Not necessary. You're better off doing that as soon as you can.
Yeah.
No, well, I accept if there's a replacement one coming, then that's a different story. I'm happy to I think the staff have got the idea, and I don't think there's any great controversy about the ones that you can, you do,
Yeah.
the ones that you need to wait for, you don't do straight away. But it doesn't have to be in the motion.
So
I'll withdraw the amendment.
All right, no problem. Okay, do we have any other particular points that we would like included in this particular motion? If not, do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Neal?
And you moved it originally?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. And I'd just like to make some final comments on this particular point. I think it's very important that we do note the extensive work that has gone into this draft public toilet strategy. From the time that it went on exhibition, we received 17,000 visits to the draft strategy and 179 formal comments, which is one of the largest that we've received from council reports on exhibition. The council staff have also done a utilisation survey on each of the toilet blocks that were proposed to be decommissioned by the county mechanism. And from both of these methods, being the comments and council's formal work, the comprehensive consultation process, all of the feedback received and observed was used to amend the strategy that we have been reviewing tonight. Through this process and the workshop that we as councillors attended, it's very evident that work was done to amend this strategy, noting that the toilet blocks to be decommissioned were reduced from 11 till 7. And as part of the revised strategy, council proposes to include the sanitary bins, which is a very big thing to include in our future toilet blocks. And I'm very pleased that the community's feedback was taken on board in this revision. So yes. I will now close the meeting at 6:36 p.m. and note that the next meeting will be on the 12th of August and it'll be at 5 p.m.
To clarify, were there any items that were held over? Okay.